Okay, here's how they're going to face the green flag. Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian favorite in car 12, on the pole. You can see the time there, a minute 28, 96 100 seconds. Nigel Mansell will start second in car number 5 in the Williams Judd, while in third position will be former world driving champion Alain Prost in car number 11, the Marlboro McLaren. Lining up fourth will be the Ferrari driver from Austria, Gerhard Berger, in car 28. And in fifth starting position will be Brazil's new world driving champion, for whom this track has been renamed, Nelson Piquet, in his Camel Lotus Honda. Sixth in the starting order will be Michele Alboreto of Italy in car 27 of Ferrari. A lot of Ferrari fans here in Brazil today. And Terry Boutsen of Belgium in car number 20 of Benetton Ford, who's really been doing well in the early rounds of practice. Riccardo Patrese in car number 6, Williams Judd car. It lines up in 8th place. And Ivan Capelli, the youngest driver in the field from Italy in the Leighton House March, number 16, is in 9th position. Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima in car number 2 is lining up 10th, the Camel Lotus Honda. In 11th position is Derek Warwick, a 33-year-old Briton in car 17. The USF&G Arrow is powered with the Megatron engine. 12th in the starting lineup is Alessandro Nannini, an Italian who has moved into the Benetton Ford team here in car number 19 and has also done extremely well in the early rounds. A rookie driving in his very first Grand Prix race is next, a former landlord for Ayrton Senna, Mauricio Gugelmin in car number 15, a Leighton House March. In 14th starting position will be Andrea De Cesaris in car 22, the Real Ford. And then is Eddie Cheever in the USF&G Arrows number 18. 16th, Philippe Alliot of France in the LaRousse and Calmel's Lola Ford. And his teammate Yannick Dalmas in car 29 lines up 17th. Then it's René Arnoux, one of 8 men who has won Grand Prix races, next in car 25. Then Philippe Streep in car 14, an AGS Ford. Another rookie, Luis Perez Sala of Spain in car 24, a Minardi. Stefan Johansson in car 26, a Ligier is 21st. Jonathan Palmer of England in a Tyrrell car 3. Adrian Campos of Spain in car 23, and then Stefano Modena, another Spaniard, in car 33. And the last row will be Gabriel Tarquini in car 31 on a Coloni Ford, and Oscar Larrari, another first-timer, he from Argentina, in car number 32.
Oscar Larrari, of course, is 34 years old nearly, and this is his first Grand Prix, so he's one of the oldest drivers to start in the Grand Prix for a long time, or rather to start his Grand Prix career.
Well, of course, David, the Hacaparagua circuit, recently renamed in honor of Brazil's world champion Nelson Piquet, is quite old and pretty much worn out. It measures 1.26 miles to the lap and has 10 turns. The most interesting aspect is that the fans, all of whom are seated in the grandstand, can see the entire track, unique among today's Grand Prix circuits. The surface is gritty and very abrasive, so much so that Goodyear has increased its weekend team allowance from the customary 10 sets of tires to 12. The cars are pulling out now on their formation lap. They'll go around slowly and be back in just a moment.
Well, one of the things, of course, that's changed with all that tremendous rain last night and this morning, there'll be a lot of mud has been washed onto this circuit, which turns to sand now it's dried out. This circuit is already pretty gritty and is very, very hard on tires, particularly the right front, because unlike most Grand Prix circuits, this is a left-hand circuit. The drivers find that a little bit disconcerting. Their neck muscles are used to going right all the time, and now they're going left. And it's very tough on the right front tire. There's a couple of slightly banked corners. Turn 2 and turn 5 have a little bit of bank, but they're all very, very long, tiring corners. And I noticed that some of the drivers are even doing what the IndyCar drivers do, and that is they're having neck straps. Prost has got a neck strap under his left armpit to keep his head down, because through turns 6 and 7, for instance, these cars are developing up to 3.5 times G-force.
Well, some other things that have been adapted here for this Grand Prix, because of the hot weather, which we don't have today. As I said earlier, it's only about 80 degrees now. The Williams Judd drivers, Nigel Mansell and his teammate, have cool hats. And this is an American innovation. An American is down here equipping these cars with this bottle of ethylene glycol, about 50 degrees, in hopes that it'll keep the drivers cool for the running of the Grand Prix competition. Now the fans are really cheering as the drivers are moving to around past the start-finish line on their formation lap. Okay, let's go down to John Bizignano.
bit on the, just to bring you up to date, a little bit on the starting grid down here as they formed up. No word out of McLaren. We tried Ron Dennis twice. He wouldn't tell us a thing, so we don't know exactly how pole sitter Ayrton Senna looks just before the start of this race. The Ferraris, Nelson were in excellent good shape, actually. They were both on the line in plenty of time. Early first people out on the grid. One small change was to the rain light. They changed the rain light on Michele Alboretto's car. That could be very important because if the rain starts and the rain lights do not operate, the marshals do have the option of pulling the people off the racetrack for that problem. Lotus, Peter War, his same cooperative self, no information whatsoever, but they have pushed the spare car from the Lotus pit down to the end of the pit lane. Now that means if there is a problem, we think it's too late for a driver change on that, but there had to be some mystery to that on the grid due to the fact that they pushed the spare car out so that Nelson Piquet could possibly get into that spare car. The Williams, they had a leak in the active suspension. That can be a problem because when there's a leak, the whole car falls down onto the track. But it is supposed to be fixed at this particular moment. Lee Gogg, you are with us, the manager of International Motorsports for Goodyear. Lee, every second you've been wondering exactly what the situation is going to be here tire-wise. How do we stand at this particular moment?
Well, our main concern right now is whether it's going to rain. We practiced in the rain this morning. Very marginal. Wears out the rain tires in 15, 20 laps. So we're anxious to get about an hour and 10 minutes of dry in, so if it rains, it's not going to stop us. If it rains halfway through the race, it's going to be very bad commotion because the track is terrible for either wet or dry tires.
Thank you, Lee. Back to the booth. Chris, take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Sean. The tire situation here is interesting. The regulating body, the Fédération Internationale du Sport Automobile, has established a set of criteria as to whether the race will be called wet or dry. If more than half the cars start on rain rubber, which they're not, then it will be called a wet race, and it would continue on no matter how hard it rained. Now with the field on slick tires, if it rains, they may stop the race so they can change the rain tires and shorten the distance by 3 laps. They're moving into position. Now you see the light up in the corner of your screen. Once that red light comes on, between 4 and 7 seconds, the green light will go on, and that will start the 1988 Formula One season here in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
This is the part they don't like. Ayrton Senna, pole position there on the left side of your screen, has been sitting there already for some seconds. He doesn't know whether to put it into first gear or what. There, he's got his arms up in the air. I think Ayrton Senna, our pole sitter, has stalled. The yellow flags are being waved there. Ayrton Senna stalled the engine. Are they going to start the race in there, or are they going to push him off? Somebody else is boiling down there. The cars have been waiting far too long.
Oh, we've got problems here.
That's the Leighton House March. It's smoking away there, or steaming away there. It's obviously blown a water hose off. And I see one of the Williams Hondas is smoking out the exhaust pipe very badly. Number 6, that's Patrese' car. Engines are off. The yellow flags are out. And they're going to have a bit of a regroup here, a bit of a rethink. A lot of things down here in Rio de Janeiro don't run too smoothly, and this is obviously one of them.
Exactly. Well, we're chuckling here, but it's not a laughing matter at all. And now what this does, the FIA regulations come into play here, and they're quite elaborate, and we'll touch on those after this commercial break. Actually, one of the cars stalled on the track during the formation lap, which is why the officials did not bring the starting flag or turn the green light on. In the meantime, Senna, whom you're looking at now, Ayrton Senna, the McLaren mechanics are working on the gear linkage of his car. David, you had it right. He couldn't get his car in gear, and this was a blessing for Senna, actually, if you can believe that.
Well, it was obviously a bit of a blessing for Senna. It was also a blessing, too, for Larori, whose car was being pushed. Unfortunately, it was not a blessing for poor old Yvon Capelli, who's done so well in practice and qualifying here in the Leighton House March Judd. Now, Nigel Mansell stopped on the grid. As soon as he realized the bets were off, he in fact took off and did another warm-up lap, which, if his fuel is the least bit marginal, probably was not the best thing to do. I don't quite know why he went round again like he did. Maybe just to check out that slightly faulty active suspension that he had.
Well, that may well be, and of course fuel is the problem here. The fuel regulations, not so much for Mansell because his car has unlimited fuel, but for a turbo car, the limit has been dropped way down this year, David, as you well know, and there's some concern about the 8 turbo cars in the race being able to make it to the finish line on the fuel allotment. Now, what's been used here in the formation lap, and for Nigel Mansell an extra lap, will be compensated for by shortening the race by 1 lap. when it's restarted. Perhaps more laps. We'll have to wait and see what the officials decide on that. We do apologize for our American viewers. We understand the video isn't quite up to our United States standards. We hope to get that improved before the show gets going. Now let's go down pit road to John Bisignano.
Thank you, Chris. The situation is down here is that Ron Dennis has just made the decision to roll the pole-sitting McLaren off the grid. Ayrton Senna's car is out of the pole position on the grid, and they are pushing it behind the pit wall at this very moment. The spare car is coming out of the McLaren pit. They're revving the engine, trying to get everything warm. They have to realize it will only have one pace lap on that car where everyone else has two. They'll be a little bit more up to temperature. Now, we are trying to find out. Of course, we want to stay away from McLaren at this particular situation, but we're trying to find out where Senna's going to have to start from. I believe he'll have to come out of the back of the pit lane or from the front of the pit lane, but we'll see exactly what the movements are here. Also, March has gone after their spare car. So we'll keep an eye on the pits and keep you informed. Back to you, Chris.
All right, John, one of the things that's different in international Formula One racing than United States racing is where in the United States the car qualifies, and in Formula One racing the driver qualifies, and you can substitute cars, which is being done now in 2 and possibly 3 instances. There's all sorts of mechanical work taking place on the grid there. There's Austrian Gerhard Berger and his Ferrari. We see they're lowering his car down. So, and the 3-minute sign was given a few moments ago. There you can see him cooling off the radiator.
I've seen 2 or 3 sets of tires being wheeled out. I don't know who would want to change tires at this stage of the race. There's a fight developing on the grid, which is also rather interesting, between some officials and somebody else who looks like an official, but obviously is not. The Leighton House judge has been pushed away, and I don't know whether they're going to try and replace that with a spare car or not.
This is a great start to the 1988 Formula One season.
Meanwhile, of course, the clouds over to our right are continuing to threaten, and this, of course, delay is the sort of thing that could bring rain on as we wait. Hopefully it will not rain, but it certainly looks very threatening over to the south and west.
Again, we apologize for the quality of the video we're seeing. The formation lap is starting up. We'll be back for the start of the Brazilian Grand Prix after this.
The latest report down from the pit lane is that Ayrton Senna will have to start from the end of the pit. Right behind him is Ivan Capelli in the March, also a spare car, and Loretri in the Brune team, the gentleman from Argentina. We have 3 cars for the first Grand Prix that will be making the first Grand Prix start of 1988 from the pit lane. Now remember, they try and set up these spare cars as well as possible to fit the actual driver who is number 1 in the team. McLaren, they say there is no number 1, but the car was set up for Prost. He was the last man in that spare car. Senna is driving a strange vehicle. He's never done a lap in this particular car.
Okay, the cars are completing their second pre-starting lap, and a little bit about the McLaren cars. They're brand new. They're the only all-new turbocharged chassis we're seeing in Formula One racing this year. The turbocharged engine is being phased out at the end of the season, and the McLarens and the Lotuses have a brand new V6 Honda engine that is quite potent and looking like it's going to be a tough engine to beat during the course of the 1988 Formula One season. Once again, we apologize for the quality of our video in the United States and hope to improve that as time goes on.
Well, Senna certainly proved that the Honda engine had got the power again this weekend. He was quickest in every practice session, including this morning's warm-up when it was raining quite heavily. However, of course, starting from the back or near the back, as he's going to have to do, might put a lot of load on. No? Now, he's starting in the pit lane, of course. He has to start after everybody else has gone. So it's going to put quite an extra load on there. Somebody else being dragged off the track. That's the second fight, and the race hasn't even started yet. We're doing extremely well down here. The cars again forming up. As you see, the cars at the back of the grid are unfortunate here in Rio because they have to start off on a bit of a curve.
That's right, David. I can't believe that. Now they're closing up. There's supposed to be 8 meters between the cars, and it looks like they're jockeying for position back there. I must say that the Latin blood here is quite private. The officials have done a great job in getting this show back on the road.
They got it on the road very quickly indeed. But I expect these drivers now are really ready to get this race underway. This is the first race. It's a long time since they raced. The red light's on. 5 seconds to go.
There we go, and the race is underway. Let's see who pulls out first. Nigel Mansell makes the move in an Army aspirated car, but
Alan Prost. And the car has stalled on the grid. Alan Prost takes the lead, though.
That's right. Prost, Mansell.
Berger, is that behind him?
Nakajima. Piquet in there, the Camel Lotus car. So Alain Prost, a 4-time winner of the Brazilian Grand Prix, is out in front in the brand-new Marlboro McLaren as the battle between the turbocharged cars and the free-breathing, normally aspirated cars begins on the 1988 Formula One season here in Rio de Janeiro.
We saw some tremendously fast lap times from the normally aspirated cars during practice and qualifying, but of course when it comes to racing, the one thing they haven't got is the straight line speed, and of course that's where all the passing takes on, going onto these long straights. There, the sparks showering off these cars. They're all full of fuel. They're heaviest, and they're dragging the bottoms of the cars along this track.
As the fuel burns off and the cars get lighter, we'll see the sparks become less and less prominent. But Prost, who really has got this track figured out.
And the second turbo car, Berger, has displaced Mansell. At the end of that long straight, the turbocharged Ferrari just managed to power past and leaving this man, Alain Prost, with a pretty healthy lead at the end of the first lap.
Well, there we see our close boys coming off around the corners here. The gear shifts per lap, David, what are we talking about?
Well, round about 23, 22 gear shifts per lap. The turbo cars making about 23, 24 in some cases, just a little bit more.
You can see the tire marks where they spun the rubber there at the start, getting off the grid there, and none of them are in a straight line.
That start looked pretty hairy to me, as usual. Everybody swapping and jostling as they left the grid. Always a moment of tension in Grand Prix driving when they make those incredible standing starts. There you see it again. Standing start, repeated view of it from the air. And you can see those cars swapping places there. Somebody going very slowly on the right there.
I'm surprised, David, that they're not opening up more. They're quite close together, which is unique. Maybe they've got this equivalency formula worked out pretty well. In the States, equivalency formulae have never worked. You could never get one type of engine to deliver the same power as another type, but here they seem to be quite close.
Well, especially as this is really an interim equivalency formula as well, because next year there will be no turbocharged cars at all.
Okay, we'll be back for more of the Brazilian Grand Prix after this message. Okay, Alain Prost leads Gerhard Berger, Nigel Mansell, Nelson Piquet, and Michele Alboreto in the top 5 positions. And Berger is 1.7 seconds behind, falling behind, almost 2 seconds behind leader Alain Prost now. And Mauricio Gugelmin has walked back to the pits out of the race. He's a popular fellow here. There's the super on your standings there. France, Austria, Great Britain, Brazil, Italy, and Belgium in the top 6 positions.
That'll be a great disappointment to the Brazilian crowd. Of course, Mauricio Gugelmin was making his Grand Prix debut here in front of a home crowd. Now we get in the classic race. In that pit spot there, you see the Ferrari of Alboreto is being hounded unmercifully by the 2 normally aspirated Benettons of Thierry Boutsen and Alessandro Nannini. Of course, neither of which can get around him. For sure, he is slowing those 2 cars up, but there's no way they're going to be able to power past him, because with the turbo Ferrari, he's always just got the legs of them when it comes to the passing places, which must be very frustrating for the other 2.
This is what's frustrating for the normally aspirated drivers. The cars are quicker through the corners, and but there's only one line through the corner. You can't pull out and pass someone, unfortunately.
Berger, however, in 28, is starting to catch up with Alain Prost a little bit. He's really putting on a good show.
But Prost is pulling away. He's almost 3 seconds ahead of Berger now. Here's our second place rider, Gerhard Berger, car number 28, the Ferrari team driver, along with Michele Alboreto. So Prost is gone, so to speak, almost 3 seconds ahead. Mansell is third in car number 5, the first of the normally aspirated cars in the race, and he should have no trouble with fuel, and for that matter, tires. What Lee Gogg didn't have time to tell us was that the reduction in power, up on the curbing there for Berger, the reduction of power has transferred the wear from the right rear to the right front. And here's Stefan Johansson in the new Ligier. That car's an interesting car, David, with a couple of gas tanks here and there.
Probably a bit too interesting, I think. Technology has gone a bit wild there, and Stefan's not particularly happy with the car at the moment, although, of course, he hasn't done a lot of practice and testing in that car yet. But you're right, it has got 2 fuel tanks. It has another fuel tank between the engine and the gearbox at the back, and plus the driver sits in the usual seat tank.
I wonder if our director is Gerhard Berger's brother-in-law.
Whoa, Berger using a lot of curb there. Yeah. You have to be very careful doing that sort of trick, because if the wheel goes over the back side of the curb, obviously the chassis hits the curb, and you can bend the suspension pickup points very, very easily. He's using a lot of road. He's putting on a good show here.
You can see him swiveling back and forth there. There's Prost out in front. and Berger right behind. He's now 4.5 seconds behind Prost. There's Mansell, Piquet.
Mansell lying in a position that as this race progresses, he could easily move up into that lead group, because if the turbo cars use up too much of their fuel and they have to turn the boost down a little bit, these normally aspirated cars like the two Benettons you see there, or Nigel Mansell, will be sitting in a very, very hot position. There you see how the normally aspirated Benettons are really struggling to get past Alboreto, who is undoubtedly balking them through these twisty bits.
The original race distance was 61 laps. Now that will be shortened. We haven't heard from the officials yet by how much. Certainly 1 lap, perhaps more.
But they did do 2 warm-up laps, so that will have used up some of their fuel. Obviously not as much as a race lap.
It's interesting here that the Berger's giving that Ferrari such a hard ride in second place. I'm sure he's going to have to make more than 1 stop for tires.
Well, that's the problem. If you overdrive here at this Nelson Piquet circuit in Rio, you really are asking for trouble with your tires. The tires have a hard enough time of it here anyway. But if you overdrive, particularly through this turn here, this is the long turn 6, I mean, you put a tremendous load on those outside tires.
What about drafting, David Hobbs? There, as you can see, Terry Boutsen right behind Michele Alboreto in 6th place and sticking with him on the straightaway. Is Alboreto pulling him down the track?
He'll be pulling him a little bit. Formula One cars don't draft as well as NASCAR cars, but there is no doubt about it, the draft does work.
And we can see right there
Alboreto doing a bit of judicious, not blocking, he wouldn't want to call it blocking, but making the car very, very wide. Thierry giving him a really hard time. Thierry had some good practice times. He was a bit frustrated. He felt he could have qualified a little bit better. And, of course, if he had, he might be in front of Alboreto now and being able to challenge Nelson Piquet.
You know, as I said earlier, the ruling body, the FISA, has many, many regulations, page after page, one of which is, for safety reasons, all drivers have to be able to get out of their cars in full racing regalia within 5 seconds. And that test was given every driver on Thursday. And Philippe Alliot, the Frenchman, was the champion. He got out of his car in 1.9 seconds. And Philippe Stripe, another Frenchman, failed twice before finally making it on the 3rd try, right at 4.9 seconds. But yesterday, during practice, Terry Boutsen, this man right here, was stopped in the pits. There you see him in 6th place. Was stopped in the pits and given a spot check. And it took him 18 seconds to get out of his car. And it turned out that he had taken the test with a very small steering wheel in the car. And they put the standard big one back in for the race. So the officials told him he had to make some changes, and what they did, they modified the steering wheel so he can get out quicker.
You can see at the end of that nearly 3,000 foot back straightaway, that's the only place where Alboreto puts any real daylight between himself and Thierry. And at this stage now, through 6, 7, 8, and 9, Thierry winds him in until they come to the front straight, and he's right back with him again. It must be really very, very frustrating. They're both about holding their own with Nelson Piquet running there in the number 1 Camel Lotus, who's running in 3rd spot rather, and no, I was right, 4th. Thierry having a go down the inside. Alboreto's not going to let him. He's just right behind him, just out the picture.
It's amazing that Boutsen is really looking for a place to go, and right behind him is this new driver for the team, Alessandro Nannini, who's doing a great job. These cars are powered by Ford's new DFR engine as opposed to the DFZ. It's basically the same engine with some improvements. It was supposed to have a 5-valve cylinder head, but that has turned out to be more difficult than they expected, so it has a 4-valve head. But it's a great engine, it seems, and it looks like it's going to give these turbos a run for the money before the season's out, particularly when we get to circuits like Monte Carlo and Detroit.
These cars weaving about on this very, very long cornered track like a lot of slot cars. There's Thierry right behind him now coming onto the last corner before the straight, and you just watch how that long-legged Ferrari will pull away down this back straight.
You know, it's interesting. This track is flat as a billiard table. It's flat as Milwaukee Mile of the United States. I don't think there's a flatter Grand Prix circuit around it. It's really featureless.
Right, Thierry hung on better then. He hung on a lot better that lap, and as he goes into this south curve, all the corners here, there we see Senna. Senna coming from the back of the grid. If you remember, he had to leave after everybody else has started, and we haven't seen much of him yet, but he's now up to 13th spot and obviously making ground.
Okay, and we have Alain Prost, Gerhard Berger, Nigel Mansell, Nelson Piquet in the top 4, and we'll be back with more of the 1988 Brazilian Grand Prix after these messages.
Oh, Williams there. Crazy.
Well, Alain Prost has built a 9.5-second lead over Gerhard Berger. Terry Boutsen has passed Michele Alboreto for 5th place. And Ricardo Patrese has coasted to the side of the road with trouble in his car, leaving the Williams Judd colors for Nigel Mansell. Now, this year, there are new rules to live by. The turbocharger go from 4 bar to 2.5 bar with a pop-off valve. What's a bar, David?
Well, a bar is short for barometric pressure, and barometric pressure is about 14.5 pounds per square inch. So when these guys are running at 2.5 bar, for the IndyCar enthusiasts and teams, that'll be classed as like 75 inches of mercury, but in reality, it's about 33, 34 pounds per square inch of pressure. Just about the same pressure as most street cars using the tires.
All right, the turbo cars reduced their fuel allowance from 52 gallons to 40 gallons, a 25% reduction. And what does that mean, David?
Well, that means that if they're allowed to run at this 33 pounds per square inch of boost, they may not, in theory, be able, in actual practicality, may not be able to run that much boost all the time because they'd use up too much fuel, so they might have to turn it down to get through. The normally aspirated cars, on the other hand, have got no fuel restrictions at all, and they're all carrying between 180 and 190 litres of fuel back to the old 50-gallon mark.
And another new rule, for safety's sake, is that any new engine must have a new chassis, and any new chassis must have the driver's footbox behind the front axle line. So what they've done, in a sense, is grandfathered in the old turbo cars and the old normally aspirated cars for that matter, but many of the new cars have their driver's feet behind the front axle. With the normally aspirated or free-breathing cars, there's no fuel allowance, so they can run as much fuel as they wish. How much do you think they went with compared to the turbo, David?
Well, they're running, like I say, they're still running about 50 gallons. The turbo cars have made tremendous strides in the last few years at reducing their fuel consumption. There we see
there's Senna moving up. He's in 9th place. We may be in on one of these virtuoso drives that happen every so often in Grand Prix racing. There's Senna going by Satoru Nakajima for 8th place from the helicopter. And it's the crowd here ever loving it. Ayrton Senna da Silva, the new Brazilian star, heading for what hopefully will be a world championship this year. And let's go down to John Visignano.
A little update here in the pits, a little update for you, Chris. Larari was the first gentleman out of the Grand Prix in 1988 in the Vroom. He got in the spare car and it just wouldn't go the second time around. Bad luck for Larari. Stefan Johansson in the pits with the Ligier for fresh tires only after what I call 4 laps. Campos in the Minardi came in with his whole rear wing bent down. It did not look like there had been an accident. It looked more like a structural failure. Modena in the Vroom, he came in for tires. Zanini and the Benetton came in for tires. It's unbelievable that it's the normally aspirated cars that are coming in here for tires. We all thought, of course, it would be the turbo cars that would wear out that rubber a little bit sooner than the normally aspirated cars. Gugelman is out in the marks. We don't know why. And Ayrton Senna's problem on the grid was with the McLaren gearbox. Ron Dennis won't elaborate any more than that, but Ayrton Senna in the spare car because of gearbox problems with his race car. Back to you, David and Chris.
All right, here we have Nelson Piquet being chased down by Terry Boutsen. And here's a case of one of those normally aspirated cars giving the turbocharged car some pressure. There you can see on the long straight the turbo boosting along Piquet down the straightaway. But,
well, Ayrton Senna may be driving as you say, a classic race in the back of the grid. But Thierry Boutsen from about the middle or near the front of the grid is driving an absolute blinder today. He hassled with Alboreto, got round him and just drove off and left him for dead. And they were about 3 seconds behind Nelson Piquet, and he's wound that ride in, and it's now going to give Nelson Piquet a tremendously hard time until he'll almost certainly get by him.
Well, on the 10th lap, Alain Prost has built a 12-second lead over Gerhard Berger and is continuing to pull away. Here we have Piquet leaning out the side to watch the driver's helmets. You can see the bumps transferring through to the drivers. They come off out of the main straightaway, or the pit straightaway.
Now here's the place where Thierry's going to really make it. The pit straight is not terribly long as they go into this long sweeping right-hander turn 1. A very fast but a very long corner. There we see Senna, I think, making up yet another place. That must put him into 7th now. I guess that was Derek Warwick he was disposing of there. Here we are back to Boutsen and Piquet. Boutsen hanging on well to those fast infield corners. As you can see, all the corners here are pretty quick. quick. There aren't any really slow ones. The slowest corner being onto the main straight, which obviously is very important to get right, because you'll then go onto a 3,000-foot straight, so you need to get onto it as quick as you possibly can.
The DFR engine in that second car, the Benetton car, is a product of Ford by Cosworth, and Ford's racing manager, Michael Cronopus, is here to watch this engine debut in Formula One competition, and he's got to be smiling right now the way Terry Boutsen is giving this car a ride.
Yeah, he's been smiling quite a bit this weekend. He was extremely happy yesterday afternoon in qualifying when they qualified. Well, Thierry qualified this car so well.
Boutsen is now fifth. Piquet is fourth. Mansell is in there ahead of Piquet. We can't quite see him. And here they are, nose to tail. We've got close racing. You know, David, Formula One over the years hasn't been this close racing.
Well, this is what the rules, of course, have been encouraged, have been changed to try and encourage this close racing, and hopefully to make it a little bit cheaper. And it seems to have achieved that, because we've got a lot more new teams in here than we've had for a long time. And this is the sort of racing they wanted to get with the new rules, and it looks like they're getting it. There we see Ayrton Senna, who's now moving up on to Alboreto. Alboreto not having the best day in the Ferrari. His teammate Berger running a strong second, and Alboreto about to be relegated to 7th spot.
You know, it's interesting because, as John Visignano pointed out, this car was set up for Alain Prost, and so it's not really to Ayrton Senna's taste. There they go down the track. Nelson Piquet, Terry Boutsen around the signs to the left and to the right and towards the finish line of the Brazilian Grand Prix. We'll be back for more of the Brazilian Grand Prix after this. We're back in the Brazilian Grand Prix, and Alain Prost is putting a second to lap on his advantage over Gerhard Berger, and Ayrton Senna, who started at the tail end, is now in the points. He's in sixth place last time by. Please join Bob Lay and Dick Vitale live from Kansas City at 7:30 p.m. EDT tomorrow, Monday the 4th, for our NCAA Final Four special. Bob and Dick will review the upsets and surprises of this season's college hoop tournament play. They'll also have an in-depth look at the final two teams and how they made it to the championship game. So, please join Bob and Dick tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. live for our NCAA Final Four special. And there, Nelson Piquet still trying to fend off the challenges of Terry Boutsen.
Well, he is fending him off, but only just. But about to come into the picture behind them is Ayrton Senna, who's made the most stir. There we see him coming into the picture. He's really winding these two in. Thierry will be sick as a parrot because he can't get around Nelson Piquet, and he's about to be got around by Ayrton Senna.
Well, I wondered why Prost was putting so much of a lead on. I guess he knows where Senna is.
Exactly. That's why he's going like hell, even though he would appear to have a tremendous advantage already.
Well, you mentioned the other day, David, that Formula One drivers don't drive to orders. I mean, Ron Dennis is out there. Alain Prost is burning up this racetrack, and so is Ayrton Senna. Wouldn't you think he'd have one of them take it a little bit easier?
Well, I don't think so. The McLaren and the Honda engine have all proven to be very, very satisfactory and very, very reliable, even though they're in different packages. Now they've packaged them together. The McLaren Honda is going to be one tough car to beat. And Prost, of course, is a two-time world champion, has won more Grand Prix than anybody else. But Senna really wants to join that elite group, and he's going to give Alain Prost, the master, a really hard time for the whole year, I think.
Well, Prost is running away from Gerhard Berger. Berger is now starting to be approached by Nigel Mansell. We don't see them on the screen, and we thought they'd pass it along to you. Here's Nelson Piquet. You have to understand, our director is Brazilian, and Piquet is Brazilian, and so is Senna. So he's got the ideal shot here. A Brazilian, a Belgian, and another Brazilian on the track right here.
And I think, is that Thierry Boutsen's engine smoking, or am I just seeing things? Is that blue body panel? Perhaps it's not. But Senna is about to administer the old coup de grace to Thierry. Thierry suddenly seems to have lost a bit of verve there, dropped back a little bit, but not much. He's still right with Nelson. Of course, it'll give Ayrton Senna the greatest pleasure in the world when he passes Nelson Piquet, who's really his nemesis down here in the rear.
Well, there's been some difficulty between these two gentlemen here. There was a lot lot of stories in the papers a while ago where Piquet was believed to have charged that Senna wasn't quite the masculine man he should be. Senna went to his lawyers, and he's dropped those charges now. But there's still a lot of talk back and forth. There's absolutely no love lost between these two Brazilian drivers, and I think that Senna really wants here to pass Piquet more than anything else.
Well, of course, the Brazilian temperament is such that to be a Grand Prix driver is everybody's absolute dream. And so one of these two guys is going to reign supreme as this country's absolute top man. Athlete, politician, anything. One of these two guys, Piquet has had that position for a long time, but it's about to be usurped by Ayrton Senna, who will become the Brazilian.
People who watch the practice here seem to feel that Piquet, rumored to be getting $6 million this year as his driving retainer, is not showing the spark and verve that he did last year. There are some people who think he's just going to take it easy and quick. There goes Senna past Boutsen.
Whoa.
And
that was Tarquini, I think, in that other yellow car. One of the back markers. Nicola Tarquini, that's another girl from Italy. And now we're going to see Senna. There we see him going past Thierry again. That gives you an idea of the tremendous disparity on the straight with the high boost of the turbo engine.
Think he turned the boost up there?
It certainly looks like it.
Okay, and now we have Mr. Piquet, car 1, Ayrton Senna, car 12, at it, nose to tail.
Now Piquet's car is going to get extra special wide.
If anything is going to wake up Nelson Piquet to the fact that the Grand Prix season has started, it's a look in his mirror to see Ayrton Senna right behind him.
Of course, Ayrton Senna came out of the Camel Lotus to drive the McLaren Honda, so he'll be thinking at this stage, as he winds in the team leader for Camel, that he made the right choice and maybe moving up to the McLaren.
Well, in the meantime, Alain Prost, as you can see, has put an 18.5-second lead on Gerhard Berger. And let's go down to the pits to John Visignano.
Chris Kanamaki, we have the first Ferrari in the pits of 1988. It's Alboreto, a very quick pit stop. The Ferrari pit did not look like they were absolutely ready for that pit. It had to be a very quick decision for Alboreto to duck in here. We were looking for the turbocharged cars to come in around lap 15 and 17. Alboreto is the first pit stop of the major teams. We'll look at the tires when they come off the car and give you... Williams is also setting up. Look at that situation. We'll call it from here. Chris.
Okay, and Ayrton Senna has polished off his arch rival, Nelson Piquet. And that tire story is interesting because if they're really wearing out tires on this abrasive track that quickly, there's the replay. And again, Mr. Senna, I think, turned up the boost. I hope he's going to have enough fuel to be around for the checkered flag. Getting back to the tires, I think the cars that are making stops for tires now are going to have to make another one before the race is over.
Well, I mean, there's only 17 laps gone out of a 60-odd lap race, a 61-lap race. So, yes, if they're going to change tires every 17 laps, you'll have to make another couple of stops. But if the car is not set up just quite right, or one of the tires isn't right, that could lead to a premature stop. It'll be interesting to see when Prost and Ayrton Senna and, of course, Thierry Boutsen and the normally aspirated and Nigel Mansell, the other normally aspirated car, when they have to spread out their stops.
Well, it's too bad we don't have the information on who has turned the fastest lap of the race so far. It has to be one of the McLaren drivers, either Alain Prost or Ayrton Senna, cars 11 and 12.
I would say that Senna, I don't know what the gap is between the lead and Senna. I think it's staying about the same, but of course, considering he had to start from the back, that means he must be going a bit quicker.
Well, Senna's got 14 seconds to make up in order to catch Nigel Mansell. And that's a long interval. We won't see him contesting anybody for certainly a few laps. But Prost has been able to put more than a second a lap on Gerhard Berger. Here at lap 17, he has a 19 3/4 second lead over Berger. Well, Mansell's only a second and a half behind Berger.
We haven't seen much of Nigel Mansell, which is a bit of a disappointment because as the normally aspirated leader at the moment, he's obviously driving a tremendous race, only being 1 second behind Gerhard Berger, who's obviously also doing a very good race in the turbocharged Ferrari.
We're seeing on the Super now the 35.1 second interval between the leader, Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna in 5th place.
it'll be interesting to see what that lead does. He's going to have his work cut out in the remaining 40 laps or less to actually pass the leader. There's Nigel Mansell coming into the pits for his first tyre stop. Interesting.
Okay, let's go down to John Bisignano.
We are directly across from the Williams machine, changing all 4 tires very quickly. Little trouble on that right front. The hands are up. Mansell wants to go. Revs up. He killed it. I can't believe it. Nigel Mansell killed the engine. The whole car has dropped down on to the pavement. They're spraying the radiators, trying to keep it cool. Smoke pouring out of the brakes. What happens on this car when the engine stops? The suspension lets down. It's an active suspension. It must have the engine going. Mansell going crazy now, trying to get the mechanics going. He's moving his head back and forth. They're trying to turn it over. Smoke pouring out of the brakes. 40 seconds, 43 seconds. They're going back into the garage. We have serious problems here with Nigel Mansell. He's moving his hands saying, get this sucker started, folks. And nothing's happening. Engine cover off. Nigel Mansell going into the 1 minute bracket, 59 seconds, going into the 1 minute bracket now. Things have slowed down a bit, trying to keep the whole thing cool. They're spraying air and water into the radiators. Chris, it's a sad situation. We'll find out what went wrong, but to me, unfortunately, Nigel put it back in gear and stalled it.
Well, of course, he may have had a clutch problem. You can't always tell. Like Guerrero at Indy 2 years back when he made a so-called stalled it coming out of the pits, whereas, of course, he didn't. The clutch wouldn't free. It may have been the same problem here. But these racing engines, when they get hot and they stop, they are, of course, the very devil to restart again, somewhat like the lawnmower on a hot afternoon. And, of course, the other thing that John was telling us about, the active suspension. It's really weird to watch those Williams. Never see the Ferrari. There's Berger come in.
Okay, this puts Ayrton Senna in 3rd place.
Second place. Puts him into 2nd place. Because Mansell stopped and Berger just stopped in the pit. So, so now Senna must be up into 2nd place. Unless Berger got in and out before Senna arrived, which I doubt if he did. So the whole thing is really hotting up. Both Ferraris have been in. Nigel Mansell's been in, which was early, I think, for a normally aspirated car. Senna is, in fact, still in 3rd place.
Okay, as the Brazilian Grand Prix heats up, we'll take a quick break here, and we'll be back. And here is Nelson Piquet in the pits. Meantime, Ayrton Senna has moved to within 30 seconds of Alain Prost on the track. How about that, Dave?
Well, Senna must be driving his little Brazilian heart out, because although there's been those pit stops with Berger and Mansell, which elevated into 2nd spot rather quickly, the gap has come down 5 seconds in just 3 laps. So he's really, really driving hard. Obviously, very critical is going to be his and Prost's pit stops of their own.
There it is on the screen, 30.379 seconds, and the Brazilians are having a tailor-made race for their event. And there's number 12, Ayrton Senna, and the Marlboro McLaren. Number 11 is Alain Prost out in front, and Senna's weaving to the left and to the right, an absolutely beautiful form on this 3.1.26-mile track.
About the only three front runners that have yet to stop are the 2 McLarens of Prost and Senna, and Thierry Boutsen. Thierry Boutsen has yet to stop in the normally aspirated Benetton, also putting in a sterling drive, and he is now in 3rd spot because of the fact that he hasn't stopped. Unfortunately, Mansell came in and stalled the car, or something went wrong with the engine, but he certainly seems to be coming in rather early, to me anyway, for his tyre stop with a normally aspirated car, so it may have been that he came in with an engine problem anyway.
You know, David, since 1982, only Alain Prost and Nelson Piquet have won here. It's amazing. This track is owned by these 2 drivers, but the way Ayrton Senna's going, we may see a new name in victory lane today.
Well, of course, the track, too, over its 15 races, has been won, 9 times by South American drivers, I think, and Prost has picked up another 4 of those wins, so there's not many races left for other people to win.
Well, now apparently Alain Prost has gotten the word. He's opened up a little bit of an advantage. There's 31.224 seconds. Berger's 3rd. Terry Boutsen 4th. Derek Warwick in the Megatron is 5th.
Now we're going to have another interesting situation here. We've got Berger, who was running very, very strongly in the turbocharged Ferrari, has got new tyres. with the new tyres, these cars always go a lot better. And right behind him, a second behind him, is Thierry Boutsen in the normally aspirated Benetton on tyres that have now done 21 laps. So his tyres are getting near the end of their life. If he can hold on to Berger at this stage with the tyre situation that they are, that's going to give Boutsen a lot of confidence for this year as it progresses.
Well, all Boutsen has to do is get another 10 laps in. He'll make a stop, and then he's limited to one pit stop for the race. Berger obviously will have to stop again.
Exactly, yeah. So there we see Berger catching up with, that's 26. I think that's Stefan Johansson in his Ligier drive, which he's not terribly happy with at the moment. But I'm sure that as the year progresses, they'll get a lot of their problems out of the way. Berger, of course, you remember, won the Australian Grand Prix last year from Adelaide, and of course the Japanese Grand Prix in absolutely tremendous style, and is obviously putting in a tremendous drive today.
Well, we have turbocharged cars in the top 3 positions, and then we have Thierry Boutsen running 4th now in the normally aspirated Benetton car. Turbocharged cars 5th, and the Derek Warwick at the wheel, car 17 the hours, and Andrea de Cesaris is 6th in a normally aspirated car. Let's see how the rest of the top 10 shape up. A turbocharged car, Satoru Nakajima. Then we have Piquet is an 8th now. And crossing line 9th is Michele Alberto. That's a turbo. And coming across the start-finish line in 10th position. Prost is putting it on now. It's Eddie Cheever, another turbocharged car. So
Prost has decided he'd rather win this race 5 times than let the South American driver win it for the 9th time or whatever it is, 10th time. Prost, of course, the absolute consummate racing driver of the 80s. Done an incredible job, won more Grand Prix now than any other driver, 28 to his credit. And he'd obviously like to make 30 this year.
Only 2 normally aspirated cars now in the top 10, the Boutsen and the de Cesaris. It looks like the turbos are staying to the fore here, but of course it's a long way from the finish.
Well, of course, just at this stage of the year, it just so happens that the best cars are also the turbocharged ones, the 2 Camel Lotuses, the 2 McLarens, of course the 2 Ferraris, which are really the class of the field anyway. And when they change to normally aspirated engines, I would still expect to see them in the top, right in the hunt.
Now that Nigel Mansell has fallen afoul of trouble, the Judd engine, which is a Honda-based engine being produced for the racing community by John Judd of England, is not looking too well. We can look at all of the loose stuff on the track there, David.
Well, that's a good point. I was just going to mention that. You can see from that low shot, as you say, all that grit and rubber, rolled up rubber. And Derek Warwick was saying to me before the race that this is a real one-line track. If you get off-line and you get up in that stuff, you better head for the guardrail.
You're going to get spin out on it. Oh, and look here, we have Satoru Nakajima coming back in the pits. Let's go down to John Bisinano.
We do have the Japanese drivers, Nakajima in the pits. It looks like a routine stop. Everyone's saying they're ready. They cannot get the jack out from underneath the front of the car. Nakajima is on his way. We had Piquet in a 7-second stop. Arnoux is in for the first time. Berger had an 8-second stop in the Ferrari. Stefan Johansson is in for the second time. Most of the turbo cars have stopped. Of course, our race leader is still out there. Both McLarens have not stopped. Nigel Mansell is sitting across from me in agony. And also, both the USF&G Arrows have not stopped yet. They must be getting very good tire wear. McLaren is setting up. We'll cover that for you as soon as it comes in. Back to you, Chris and David.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And we'll be watching for that pit stop to see just how well the various crews handle their 1-2 punch here. This is really remarkable, David. A new car, a new engine, a new designer. But incidentally, the McLarens are designed by an American designer, Steve Nichols, who worked for the Gabriel shock absorber people for many years, has been with Team McLaren for a long time, and this is from his pen. This new car, and the Honda engine is brand new, a different bore and stroke formula than the V6 Honda that was used last year. So this is a remarkable achievement here for a new car and a new engine to be 1-2 in the first Grand Prix of the year.
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, when they arrived here, the cars had never turned a wheel before, but we seem to be seeing rather a lot of Gerhard Berg at the moment, who's running in 3rd spot. We saw another look at the track there. You can see that rubble on the track. Berger is only 7 seconds behind Senna, but of course Berger has stopped once. Senna has yet to stop, which will obviously temporarily at least put Berger back in front of Senna when he does stop. The only thing is that as Senna stopped so early, Berger stopped so early, will he in fact have to stop again?
Senna's 33 seconds behind Prost. Berger, Boots, Warwick, and DeChesner is the next in line. What about the tires, David? We hear in the States the tires going away in stock car racing and in IndyCar racing. When the tire goes away, what does it mean to the driver?
Well, these tires, of course, in theory don't have a tread because they are slick. But there is that rubber on the top is very thin, and it is a tread. And of course it gets hot, and as it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and it gradually loses consistency and its constituency, and it gets very slippery, and the car starts to slide more and more and more. And it's amazing how revitalizing a set of new tires is. It just makes the whole car so different. It's hard to believe it's the same car sometimes. And of course it's very important too, a place like Indianapolis, which American viewers are more used to, or more familiar with, to get the right setup of tires there. Incredibly important. There you can see, of course, a lot of that tire is all lying at the side of the road now.
Exactly. You can see the grit and grime on the side of the road there. But, David, another thing we hear in the States is a lot of talk about stagger, how important it is and how tough it is when you don't have it right. We never hear that term used in Formula One racing.
Well, mostly Formula One races are pretty much of a combination of equal of left and right turns, and so you don't really need stagger. You only need stagger when the track is a one-way track. Now, it just so happens that here we've got 3 very long left-hand corners, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if some of the guys are using stagger. And into the pits comes He'll be very determined to make this a good stop.
Here you go, John.
Alan Prost in the pits, and the McLaren boys go to work. Both jacks up, left and rear. They're doing his helmet also. He must have used up all of his tearaway visors at this point. Ron Dennis in the front of the car. Saying, all right, they do have a problem with that left front. Your leader is out of the pits. A very quick stop. How quick was that?
11.9 seconds was up on the screen.
About a 12-second stop. When the slow down and speed up is going to let Senna get very, very close. You can show him wiping Alain Prost's helmet there. The heat is tremendous here for the driver, even though it's only 80 degrees. There's a high level of humidity that prevails here in Rio de Janeiro. And speaking about the heat, the brake temperatures on these cars have proven excessive. And as a consequence of new temperature-sensitive paint is being used as indicators on the front edge of on the narrow side of the brake disc. 3 different colors. The first color, the paint changes at 2,000 degrees. The second color paint at 2,300 degrees. And the third color paint at 2,500 degrees. So after the car is out for practice and comes in, they can tell by looking at the paint just how hot those brake ducts are. And if they get to be real hot, then they can increase the brake duct size, and that's a problem with the ducts. The FIA says they can only be so big. We'll be back with more of the Brazilian Grand Prix after this. Okay, and Ayrton Senna has been in the pits and had tough luck. Stalled the engine. He was in for 32 seconds. Think of the tough luck, David, that Ayrton Senna's had. At the start of the race, he had to come from last, work his way back to second, and now his teammate Alain Prost is in, makes a 12-second pit stop. Ayrton Senna goes in, and it's over 30 seconds, so he's got to do it all over again.
Yeah, he's worse off now than he was in the first place. But this guy, Berger, the cameraman seems to have a bit of a love affair with, is certainly putting on a good show. He's only 11 seconds behind Prost, and in fact, just before Senna's pit stop, Berger had wound down the gap between him and Senna from like 9 seconds to 4 seconds. So Berger, with his new set of tires, he's already made one stop, is obviously running very, very strongly. The only thing is, will he have to make yet another stop? Because he did stop rather early.
Well, but I do believe Berger's going to have to stop for more rubber before this race is over. There he is in number 28, following one of the normally aspirated cars.
Well, he stopped on about lap 17, so he's almost bound to have to make another stop, unless he really particularly likes his set of tires that's on the car at the moment. They seem to be doing him a good job at the moment.
The spectator turnout today is a little bit less than anticipated. It may have been the rain this morning, and of course it is Easter Sunday in a highly religious country where other things take priority than motorsport.
There we see Berger again. Berger actually losing a bit of time on that lap. He's now 12.7 seconds behind the leader, Alain Prost, who's made what will certainly be his one and only stop, unless there's something wrong with the set of tires he's got now.
Ayrton Senna is now back in 6th position. He's on 2 seconds behind Boutsen, and if he catches Boutsen, when the statistics of this race are analyzed, it may be that Ayrton Senna will have passed more cars than there are in the race.
He certainly will have done it. He'll pass them all at least once, probably twice.
Okay, let's talk to John Visignano once more.
Thank you, Chris. Just a little bit of an update down here. Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell came in for a routine stop, no problems whatsoever. Senna, when he came in, he did not stall the car in trying to get it out. The engine just sort of fluttered dead as soon as he came into the pit stop. And as you say, that was a lengthy stop and has put him back in a bad position. When Arnoux came in, he was very slow. We'll try and find out exactly what was wrong there. De Cesaris came in weaving all the way up and down the pit lane. That's not unusual for De Cesaris, but it looked a little bit worse than normal. Cheever was in and out. Now Mansell and Patrese, both of the Williams cars are finished here in this Brazilian Grand Prix. The only thing we could get out of a very cooperative Frank Williams was simply that it was an engine problem. So the new Judd engines for the Williams team have let them down a bit here in Rio. I still say that the engine of Mansell would have been okay if the RPMs would have been up or in the right gear, or the clutch would have been all right too, but they could not restart these very, very hot engines. Back to you, Chris.
Ayrton Senna has been given a black flag by a pit side attendant there, and I can't imagine why.
Well, I can't, unless it was some sort of infraction, pit infraction, when he made his stop. Maybe he didn't take any notice of the flag marshal at the end of pit lane. Otherwise, I can't imagine what they're calling him in for. The black flag, for those that don't know, is shown to a driver with his number, and it means come in number 12, your time is up.
Can't come in for consultation, right? A lot of people mistakenly think it means disqualification. It could, but it means come in for a consultation. They want to talk to Ayrton Senna about something.
Well, usually it used to be that it was given if they saw something wrong with your car. It wasn't so much a consultation. They wanted to say, excuse me, but your rear bodywork's coming off.
Losing oil or something.
But it looks all right at the moment. There we see Terence Boutsen rushing down the end of the straight. His car looks okay from here, doesn't it?
Now look at the track surface, how much of the rubber and asphalt has been gathered up and is spilling around the edges of the raceway. Quite a bit.
And that, of course, makes overtaking very difficult, because as you arrive at a corner and you're tempted to maybe have a go around the outside of somebody or even on the inside, if you get too far offline and get into that stuff, it's incredibly slippery.
All right, let's go back down to the pits of John Visignano.
Thank you, Chris. We have Crichton Brown, one of the team managers at McLaren. Crichton, Ayrton Senna, a very rough day for the team and for Ayrton. What was the black flag for?
Well, apparently Ayrton had to change his car after the green flag had been shown, which is fair enough, correct. But why in heaven's name they have to wait till halfway through the race to black flag, I really do not know. I think it's totally unfair.
Well, I mean that.
Okay, we accept maybe if he infringed the regulations by changing the car too late, fair enough, but don't wait until halfway through the race to tell us.
Crichton, let me ask you now, is that something that another team manager has to protest, or does it come straight from the officials?
It's the kind of thing that should come straight from the officials.
So do you know if it was the officials or other team managers coming down on you here?
For the moment, I don't know. I haven't heard. I would have suspected it's probably just the officials, but they've taken a long time to make up their minds.
Well, your man is still leading out there, Crichton. Thank you. The problem with that is that the green flag had fallen once. The first start, that green light, that's considered to be a start. And they say that you cannot grab the car out of the pit lane, to start the race a second time. Anyway, I'm sure there'll be an awful lot of discussion on it. Right now, the jury is still out relative to the McLaren pit.
Well, that's a big book of FIA regulations, and I don't think anyone knows all of them. And they found the small type here to impose a penalty on Ayrton Senna, but he's asking for trouble now. Forget what he did before. He's ignoring the black flag now.
Well, yeah, he's coming in now as it happens. But the problem with these officials is, where it really becomes almost unbearable for a team and a driver, is the fact that they should never have let him out there in the first place. I mean, they should know the rules and regulations. They can't wait till he's entertained the crowd for an hour, used up about $45,000 worth of car parts, people and equipment, and then pull him in. mean, they've had their money's worth out of him. They should have just not let him out in the first place.
Well, that's exactly the case. They're explaining now to the situation to him. He's getting out of the car, and
it all seems a bit down. He had never taken the green flag anyway.
I don't know. The red light is the starting command here for the race.
Gentlemen, the thing is, exactly as you say, David, the green flag never came on. And these unfortunate situations the decisions can be made in the heat of battle or in the heat of Grand Prix racing, we may say, and later on find out that it was not correct. Now, the same thing happened to Alain Prost back, I believe, 1986 in Monza, where he was pulled off the track for a similar situation. So the McLaren boys should know that rule inside and out. Brighton Brown, someone who never, ever gets upset, is absolutely furious, and he is not having a very good Brazilian Grand Prix. One final comment is I believe the only car, turbocharged car, that has not changed tires yet is Derek Warwick in the USF&G Aeros. You might take a look and see how his handling is doing. Those tires have to be getting awfully hot. Back to you, Chris.
Berger is now second, 17 seconds behind Prost, with Piquet back up in third position. So the Brazilians now again have someone to cheer for. Whether Piquet can find the speed in that number 1 Camel Lotus Honda remains to be seen.
It certainly hasn't really been showing enough speed so far to dust off Berger, but we still think that Berger's probably going to have to make at least one more tyre stop. But just to go back to Senna, it is absolutely extraordinary the way these officials run these races, because he never did take the green flag. They did the warm-up lap, stopped on the grid, and before the lights came on, the red light and then the green light, was when he held his hand up and the Judd engine Leighton House car quit with the smoke and Leroy was being pushed around. So they never actually certainly didn't take a start, unless, of course, they count that pace lap, which they do actually as one lap in the race. But it all seems pretty crazy to me, which they should know instantly when he tried to get his spare car out. They shouldn't be allowed to.
Well, it's an unfortunate situation, and you can bet that there's going to be a lot of talk, and the Brazilian papers tomorrow morning will have the big headlines on it. All right, with the Brazilian Grand Prix getting close to the halfway mark, we'll be back after these messages. Fine finish. Recall Nelson Piquet had a horrific accident during qualifying, and his former teammate Nigel Mansell went on to win. So, join us May 1st at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for the San Marino Grand Prix.
There we see Nelson Piquet in the Camel Lotus. He's running in third spot. He's a fairly long way behind the leader. He's certainly not going to win this race unless fortunes change dramatically. Just a few minutes ago, we saw a shot of Ayrton Senna looking, I thought, unbelievably unruffled in his pits. That he was obviously discussing the engine performance of his Honda engine car to one of the Japanese engineers from Honda, of which are number here, quite hundreds of them it seems. But he looked, I thought, unbelievably unruffled considering what's happened to him today.
Well, he did get a chance to strut his stuff in his new car before his hometown fans. And now our Brazilian director has found a Brazilian to focus on here.
I must say, if I was there at this stage, rather than talking rationally to people, I'd be kicking dogs and people and benches and things.
Tell me about your tempers, how they get in one of these racing cars, David. We're seeing how to drive the racing circuit named after the man in this car, Nelson Piquet.
Of course, Nelson Piquet is the current world champion and obviously will remain world champion until the end of the 88 season. He's making a pretty strong stipend this year, if one is to believe what one hears, somewhere around about $6 million mark. And a lot of people are already saying that he is determined to just take the money this year and run, but not run quite fast enough to win many races. And his qualifying and race performance, or his qualifying performance this weekend, was not electrifying. On the other hand, it's a newer Honda engine in this Camel car, so it may be that there's some problems to be sorted out yet. I'm sure he will go well as the season goes on.
Well, there were 8 turbocharged cars in the starting field and 16 non-turbos, normally aspirated, as we say in racing. And the positions show only Terry Boutsen in car number 20 lying in 4th place among the leaders, with 7 cars in the lead lap now. The weather, incidentally, is held up beautifully here, about 80 degrees, which is almost chilly by Brazilian standards, and it makes it good for the cars, I should think, David.
certainly a lot better than Friday and Saturday when it was unbelievably hot. Friday in particular was incredibly hot and dry, and this is much better racing temperature, but obviously the rain this morning, I think, frightened off a lot of people.
There you can see on the track, excuse me for interrupting, all of that rubber scrubbed off the tires. I mean, this is really an abrasive racetrack.
It is very abrasive. It's very hard on rubber, and although the normally aspirated guys are pretty happy now because Goodyear supply all the cars, and as the turbo pressure has gone down in the turbo cars, they don't need to have quite such a hard compound, and it suits the normally aspirated cars better than the compound they had last year, apparently.
It was explained before the race that the reduction in horsepower has transferred the wear from the right rear tire to the right front, and that's sort of hard to understand, David.
Well, it's just that they don't obviously spin the wheels quite so much because they don't have the power to do that now. And most of these cars do push a bit, understeer, as they say in road racing. Push is the expression they use in oval racing. And that tends to throw the load, especially at this circuit, right onto that right front tyre, which is really holding the car up most of the way around this track. The problem they have at places like Indianapolis, Michigan, they have a lot of right front tyre wear there too.
Gerhard Berger, lying second, is starting to pull back a little bit. He was 17 seconds behind Alain Prost, whom we haven't seen for 20 minutes. And now he's 22 seconds behind the leader, Alain Prost.
And, of course, I still think that Berger's going to have to make another tyre stop. I may be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does, because he did stop very early on.
And here we have, they must have heard me, David. Here's our leader, Alain Prost, in car number 11, the Marlboro McLaren car. And heading pitward now is Michele Alboreto in car number 27. John Visignano, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chris. We're just across from the Ferrari pit. These boys have it down to a routine. They have been practicing all weekend long. Cars up. 4 tires off, 4 tires on. Jacks come down. Michele Alboreto is out of here. Of course, Michele Alboreto is the favorite son of Mr. Ferrari, who has celebrated his 90th birthday this year. Everyone is hoping that they will bring him many victories in that 90th year. Back to you, Chris.
Well, thank you, John. You know, that was a great pit stop. So unlike the early Ferrari pit stops. They used to joke about calling them Chinese fire drills. That was a superbly professional pit stop.
The last few years, well, the last 10 years or so, Ferrari has changed its image dramatically. And they certainly do always have really good tyre stops these days. They always do a good job. As you say, it used to be a bit of a joke in the paddock, but no longer.
All right, and there we have Alain Prost, the leader, skimming around this racetrack with an advantage of 22 seconds over Gerhard Berger. K-Line's third in car 1. Boutsen in the normally aspirated Benetton number 20, followed by Derek Warwick in 5th place in the USF&G Arrows number 17. And Alboreto, we'll have to check him now. He just was in the pits. He may have dropped behind Nakajima, who was 7th. And Nakajima, I think, took 6th when Alboreto was in the pits.
The USF&G cars, now they have a slightly different problem to most of the turbo cars. They use the Megatron engine, which used to be the BMW 4-cylinder engine, has now changed hands completely. And then one of their problems was turbo lag. Now, as they've cut the boost down so much, you can afford to run a much smaller turbocharger because you don't need all that top-end boost. So you can run a smaller turbo, and the smaller the turbo, the quicker the throttle response. So although it's taken away from the ultimate horsepower, it has made, in fact, that 4-cylinder engine slightly more drivable. And they're hoping that they will reap some benefit of that as the season progresses. The way that Warwick's going here this afternoon, it looks like that may be the case. Also, their tyre wear for the turbo cars seems to be on the low side, because I believe that the Chiba has not stopped yet.
Now, the pop-off valves that the turbo cars use, you could liken it to the safety valve on a hot water heater in a home. When the pressure gets too much, it opens up and lets the pressure out. And pop-off valves in the past used to just sort of open a teeny bit, stutter a little bit, and let some of this power dribble out. But these new ones, of course, $5,000 a piece, that are made in France, just open and dump all the power. And the Arrows seem to be having more trouble with that unit than any of the other teams.
Well, they're told by FISA and the officials that they're going to have to change their engine characteristics so that it doesn't just dump the pressure. And obviously there are ways and means of doing it, and they'll just have to spend a bit more time and try and get it right.
All right, with Alain Prost leaving after 39 laps of the Brazilian Grand Prix, we'll be back for more after these messages. Ricciardo just turned to 133, 193 to gain fastest lap honors in his quest for success after coming out of the pits in new tire. Now for this tech report. USF&G Financial Services presents this ESPN Formula One technical report. USF&G, asset management tools for a brave new world.
Temperatures in Formula One are critical on every part of the car. Now they've come up with a very simple way to tell the temperature on a disc brake. They have different colors of paint that will discolor at different temperatures. The green paint goes off at about 450 degrees C. The red paint goes off at 600 degrees C. So when the car comes in, they know exactly how hot the range is on the brakes. Now in a circuit where there's a lot of left-hand corners like here, one side of the car will actually be running hotter than the other. You can see on the right-hand side of the car, the green is totally gone. This brake is running quite hot, just above 450 degrees C. The left-hand side of the car, the green paint is still there. We're running cooler on the left than we do on the right.
John Bisignano, Nelson Piquet is there for you.
We are right across from Nelson Piquet. It looks like the Lotus routine pit stop. An extra visor wash job was given to this Brazilian. And of course, everyone here hopes that he finishes very well in the points. The pits now, we will start to see the second pit stops coming along. This will be very important for the final result. Ferrari setting up. We'll have it for you, Chris. Back to you.
Well, I've never seen a pit stop in under 8 seconds where tires were changed.
That was a tremendous pit stop. 7.8 seconds in and out, which is absolutely staggering. Mind you, he needed it. He was only 10 seconds in front of Thierry Boutsen. And now he's got new tires now. They're going to be pretty tactic.
The pits are getting busier and busier in this Brazilian Grand Prix today. Piquet is exit. Here's one of the legations. Here's one of the Lolas.
We got a Balio, I think.
And let's go. Here you go, John Bisignano.
Gerhard Berger again. This is no Chinese fire drill. The Ferrari boys are very serious about this one. He's down. He's going a little bit, but he got the back wheel. He almost lost it. The wheels were almost stalled. There was a 7.46 pit stop. The engine almost died on us down here, but Berger said, no, wait, folks, I'm going back out.
Well, I want to get some of the espresso those guys had for breakfast. I want to go to work and be able to work like that. Believe me, what these Ferrari guys are doing is remarkable in the pit.
Absolutely, a tremendous pit stop. Just over 7.5 seconds for all 4 tires. Try that one night on a windy, wet night on the side of the old New Jersey Turnpike.
Okay, let's take a look. Here's Nelson Piquet coming down the pit straight. This racetrack, as you said earlier, is different because of the many right-hand or left-hand turns in it, unlike Formula One racing. Prost now owns a 21-second lead over Berger. Piquet is third, 51 seconds behind. Boutsen fourth, over a minute, and then Derek Warwick. So it looks like Mr. Alain Prost has absolute total command of this competition today.
Certainly was very tempted to pick Alain Prost to win this race because of his incredible record, but I really did feel that Senna, after his electrifying performance yesterday and this morning in the rain, had probably got this race wrapped up, and I still think he would have given Prost a tremendous run for his money if he had continued. Let's go down to John Bisignano in the pits as we've got more visitors there.
The only American in this Brazilian Grand Prix, Eddie Cheever from Arizona, has just come in. The Aero team, again, like Ferrari, they've been practicing all morning long. It looks very routine. There is a problem with the right rear. That nut was not going to come off, but they did get those hydraulic jacks a little bit more jacked up, if you will say. And the left rear was fine. The right rear did stay on. During these second pit stops, you can see the heat on the back end of these cars and on the front spindles because of the brakes and them running longer. Some of that heat will expand the metals on these one big lug nuts that hold on these wheels. So the second stops could be even more dramatic than the first. Back to you, Chris.
One of the regulations that prevail in Formula One racing is that the drivers have to be weighed with their helmet and driving uniform, driving shoes, etc., ready to go twice a season, at the beginning and at the halfway waypoint. And their weights are then programmed into the weight computer. When the cars come in during practice and are weighed, the driver's weight is subtracted, and they find out whether the car is legal or not. Now, the driver's weights used to be published, and the drivers all objected to this because somebody was always called fatso when it was pronounced, and one was always called skinny. But we got a copy of this year's driver weights and found out that the heaviest one of the people in the race today, believe it or not, was Nigel Mansell at 178.5 pounds. The lightest driver was the Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima at 132 pounds. Last year's heaviest driver was Riccardo Patrese. He's close this year, about a few pounds less heavy than Nigel Mansell. He 173.8 pounds. So every driver, as I said, was weighed this week, and those weights stay in the computer until the halftime weight.
Well, another thing, of course, that happens to a driver is that you lose a lot of weight in the race because of perspiration. Obviously, racing is probably the most classic sport where people do lose weight from perspiration because you're surrounded by all those clothes. But this guy we're looking at now, Thierry Boutsen, was always a source of wonderment to me when he and I used to drive together in John Fitzpatrick's Porsche. At the end of a 2-hour stint, Thierry would get out of the car and look absolutely just like he did when he got in it. Pretty irritating young gent, but he's being wound in now by Derek Warwick in the US F&G Arrows car. There we see Alio, who spun. He either spun or just drove off at the south curve at the end of the long back straight. Obviously a bit upset with himself.
Yeah, I would think so. David, they just revealed that Gerhard Berger has turned the fastest lap of the race, as Shade faster than his Ferrari teammate Michele Alboreto. Is the track itself getting faster?
Well, it will be today, because normally by this stage of the weekend, the track is about as fast as it's going to get. But all that rain overnight and this morning probably washed away most of the line that had already been formed, and so they've had to put down yet a new line today. There we see Nakajima in the pits. So the track probably is getting just a bit quicker.
There's an 11-second pit stop, 10.94 seconds for the Lotus Honda team, but compare that to the Ferrari, 3 seconds or 30% longer. Unbelievable.
Boutsen is now up to third spot, but I have a nasty feeling he's going to have that taken away from him by Derek Warwick in the US F&G car. And of course, as the race wears on, the turbo-powered cars do tend to prove superior, because to drive the normally aspirated car to keep up with them, you have to drive so much harder in all the turns, and you have to just drive harder generally if you haven't got quite the horsepower.
Well, Prost's lead now has been cut to 36 seconds by Berger, and I got a feeling that Prost is just toasting because he knows in the remaining laps, 18 or 19 laps to go, that he couldn't possibly make up that kind of an interval. Would you slow down if you were Prost?
Well, I would a bit, because apart from anything else, he made his pit stop before the halfway mark in the race for tyres, and he's obviously going to want to finish the race without stopping, so he will probably slow up a little bit to conserve his tyres. Although as the race wears on and the driver becomes very, very familiar and gets into a super rhythm and a flow, you can tend to slow up, take strain off the car, but you actually don't lose much time.
We have 7 cars in the lead lap. Prost, Berger, Boutsen, Warwick, Piquet, Alboreto, and Nakajima. Cheever's 1 lap down.
There we see Nelson Piquet, and right in front of him is Derek Warwick, and right in front of him is Boutsen, having a tremendous scrap here for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. There's Derek Warwick in the white car.
That's right. This is fractions of a second. That's all for the money.
They would just extend the lens on this camera a bit. We'd see old... Ooh.
How about this? I say, that's called putting the chop on him, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's at the end of the south, coming into the south curve here. That was all pretty exciting. Boutsen dropped from 3rd to 5th in one easy go there. Here we see it again in replay.
Now, this was Friday night at Williams Grove Speedway in central Pennsylvania. There'd be a great fist fight after the race over that.
Well, I think it was just that the Honda proved to have more horsepower, which is what it's had for the last 2 years, and this year's no different. And the Camel Lotus of Nelson just had a little bit more horsepower than the other two down that long straight.
You want to make a bet, David? You want to bet that some of the turbo cars run out of fuel before the race is over?
I just don't think they'd be driving this hard if they felt they were. I think they must be fairly confident they're not going to run out of gas. Petrol.
That seemed to be the big topic of conversation when the rules were announced. That because they used to run out at 195 liters, and now they got 150 liters. Of course, the turbo pressure has been reduced, and with it, the fuel economy improved, but we'll just have to wait and see with about 15 laps to go.
There's no doubt about it. The rules and regulations, as they have been for the last 2 or 3 years, have really stimulated performance with economy. And the engine manufacturers have done absolute wonders with fuel economy systems when they're producing such incredible horsepower figures.
Berger just set another fastest lap, a minute 32.94, and he's gaining on Prost. We'll be back for more of the Brazilian Grand Prix after this. 7 laps complete in the 1988 opening Grand Prix here in Rio de Janeiro. Alain Prost holds a 24-second lead over Gerhard Berger, with Nelson Piquet third and Derek Ward fourth, Terry Boutsen fifth, and Michele Alboreto sixth. Tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, ESPN presents NCAA College Baseball, a Pac-10 interstate rivalry, Arizona versus Arizona State. Arizona was a surprise in the 87 College World Series, and they're going up against the Sun Devils, led by catcher Tim Spare, who batted .328 last season. It'll be worth it just to see him pound the daylights out of the ball. So join us tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, for NCAA College Baseball, Arizona versus Arizona State.
Well, there we see the current leader, Alain Prost. We just had a graphic there which showed that he only had a 20-second lead over Gerhard Berger, but we're also getting other information from inside sources that show he's 24 seconds behind. So just to make sure, I'll put a stopwatch on and find out what it is. It is, in fact, 20 seconds.
Well, that's what the watches are for, David. The announce position here has a computer that gives us the standings every lap and the interval. It's supplied by Longines and Olivetti, and is really a remarkable device for keeping track of a motorsports competition. It's very helpful. Only if it's right, though.
Yes, well, apparently it is right. Berger seems to be making a bit of ground on Alain Prost, but of course Berger has got a lot newer tires than Alain Prost, and the thing is, there we see Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell.
That's the only one in the race. Julian Bailey, the newcomer, would fail to qualify.
Jonathan Palmer, of course, our current normally aspirated world champion, won the Jim Clark Trophy in 1987 for the normally aspirated world championship, but I don't think, the way their car's been going here, that he's going to win it this year.
For those who follow the sport, 31 cars came here. Only 30 are allowed to attempt to qualify, and Alec Caffey was eliminated after Friday morning's practice. And during the qualifying rounds, Julian Bailey, Jonathan Palmer's teammate, failed to make the race, as did Piercarlo Ginzani of Italy in one of the Zaxpeeds, and his Zaxpeed teammate, Bernd Schneider of West Germany, who's never been in a Formula One, couldn't qualify fast enough either. And the other driver to miss the race was Nicola Larini of Italy in the Osella. 26 cars took the flag, as we said, 16 normally aspirated, 8 turbos, most of which are still out there running well.
Well, our friend Thierry Boutsen, who we saw earlier on running in 5th spot, had just been taken by Alboreto in the Ferrari. So we've now got a fully turbocharged top 5, and there we see it there. Derek Warwick running particularly well in the USF&G car.
Well, I don't know what your watch said, but Berger's 18 seconds behind Prost.
He's catching up, and the thing is that with only just over 10 laps to go, 12 laps to go, we just don't know what's going on in the little Frenchman's mind. But you can be rest assured that he has the problem under control.
We do know what's going on in the Austrian's mind, though.
Yes, I will have you yet.
Well, it's interesting that we're in the dark as to the number of laps because the race has stopped. The regulations are so complex. It was supposed to be 61 laps. We know it's not going to be that long because of the stop. But we'll be back for more after this. Prost continues on his way away towards the checkered flag in the Brazilian Grand Prix with a hurry-up Gerhard Berger in hot pursuit, cutting that interval down lap after lap. Whether or not he'll be able to close it entirely, of course, remains to be seen, but it gives some spice to the closing laps of this interesting contest.
Interesting opening round of the 88 season. Gerhard Berger, of course, went out with a tremendous flourish at the end of 87, winning the Japanese and Australian races, and he's taking nearly 2 seconds a lap off Alain Prost. With about 9 laps to go and 14.5 seconds behind, even my mathematics say that it is theory it's possible to get him. Of course, passing him will be a whole different ballgame.
It's interesting, you know, the timing of these cars is done by a transponder. It's about the size of a pack of king-size cigarettes. It's attached to the bottom of the car, and as it crosses over the various lines at the start-finish line of the entry and exit to the pits, which a piece of aluminum foil is taped to the ground, and that becomes the aerial. And it's been considered extremely accurate, but our watches show the interval less than the interval these machines are showing us here. 16.033 is the last interval. What'd you get, David?
Well, I got 14.4, but of course I am just winging it out through the window of the booth here, which is strictly verboten, and we're supposed to be watching the monitor.
Yeah, we have the new one. 13.5 seconds in round numbers is the interval.
So I was right all along.
Oh, David, you're on the ball.
The only time I've ever been wrong was when I thought I was wrong, and I was right all along.
All right, let's go down to pit road and our colleague John Bizignano.
Thank you, Chris. A little bit of an update down here. Once again, is Dr. Jonathan Palmer, the only driver who has a medical degree. He is out of the Brazilian Grand Prix. His Tyrrell car was actually pushed to his stopping position in the pit lane with a gearbox problem. We have been circulating as close as we can to the Eagle Nest of McLaren. They have been watching the fuel monitoring systems very, very closely. They are concerned about Mr. Prost's fuel reserves to finish this Grand Prix. We believe that he is slowing on purpose, will let Berger draw up within 4 to 5, possibly 6 seconds, and then keep that distance. We cannot get any comment out of McLaren management for obvious reasons, but we'll try and watch the situation very closely. Chris?
Well, that's really interesting. As they said, when the rules were announced some months ago, that was the original talk that the turbos would never make it. But we're going to find out here in a matter of 9 or 10 laps or so. And it would be tough on Alain Prost and the McLaren men to see him coast to a stop out of fuel were that the case. But that's racing. You build the rules and you got to live by them and race by them.
Well, as you can see, Gerhard Berger is closing the gap at a tremendously fast rate. And if Alain Prost is going to put a stop to it, I would have thought 10 seconds was about right. You don't want to let them get too close, because all you need is a bit of a bad block in traffic, and they're all over you like a cheap suit. And he is letting him get awfully close. 10 seconds is not much, especially there's still 10 laps to go. 10 in theory, but it may only be 9. Depends if they count that second pace lap.
I think it's more like 8 laps left, David, but Berger is really hustling. He holds the fastest lap at 1:32.9.
And out the window on the eyeball Timex watch of D. Hobbs, he's only 9.4 seconds behind. It could be that Prost is judging this to a fine line. I certainly wouldn't want to say that he's not. I mean, Alain Prost is probably the most astute, the cleverest, and certainly the fastest. Well, certainly not quite the fastest now, I think Senna is, but it's certainly the cleverest Grand Prix driver out there.
And Alvaretto is only 7 seconds behind Derek Warwick for a position in the points as well.
At this stage, of course, it's nice to get as many points as you can early on in the year. Senna, no doubt, will be very distressed. He didn't score any points today, as will a number of the other runners out there. Very disappointing. Gugelmin and, of course, Ivan Capelli, who might have won the normally aspirated. There we see Berger coming up to lap Thierry Boutsen, who's now gone a lap down to Alain Prost just a few minutes ago, and is about to be put a lap down also by Berger.
And Berger has now cut the interval to less than 10 seconds.
Now this is the sort of thing where Boutsen could easily just hold him up just a little bit, going through this twisty section of the track here. He won't be holding him up much because Boutsen's been one of the quicker drivers here today, but just a little bit.
Well, Berger just has to turn up the boost on that Ferrari, and here he's doing precisely that. Look at how fast he went by him.
That's on that long back straight. So it doesn't look as if Berger's having any sort of a fuel problem.
on Mr. Alain Prost?
I think Alain's probably got the whole thing under control, but it's... yeah, he's pulled out a little bit now. He's back up to 10.5 seconds. So he has pulled out about a second on that last lap to Gerhard Berger. And of course, if Berger sees that he'll be getting lap time, gaps from his pit crew over the wall, and there's nothing more discouraging when you're making up time on a guy, you keep on seeing it come down and suddenly it starts to go up again, and he tends to knock the fight out of you a little bit.
It's obvious that Gerhard Berger is not an Austrian who likes his native country's favorite export Schlager, whipped cream on the coffee. He's a tall, gangly kid. He only weighs 141 pounds, and I guess when you're close to 6 feet, as Berger is, you really have to watch your diet to stay at 141 pounds.
Yes, and preferably don't get to 6 feet if you want to be a Grand Prix driver, because these cars are basically made for small men.
Now, the points show that Prost, Berger, Piquet, Warwick, Alboreto, and Boutsen are in the points. The World Championship is determined by a series of 16 Grand Prix races, the winner of which gets 9 points, the second place driver 6, the third place driver 4, and then 3, 2, and 1. And Andrea de Cesaris out on the course coasts his Real to a stop with mechanical problems off the side of the road on the grass as another car fights the dust here. And here's Gerhard Berger trying to make a race of it in the closing laps of the 1988 Brazilian Grand Prix.
The Real of Andrea de Cesaris went extremely well, considering it's a brand new car, a new team, or a resuscitated team from the ATS team from a couple of 3 years ago.
He was in 9th place when his car gave up.
Well, he was up to 6th place at one stage, so they must have been very, very encouraged by that, but I don't know what's going on with it now.
All right, here's our hero, Gerhard Berger, in hot pursuit of Alain Prost. An Italian Ferrari chasing a British McLaren, driven by a Frenchman with an Austrian in second place. It's truly international.
And a McLaren designed by an American, don't they?
Oh, we can't. A gearbox designed by Pete Wiseman, the American from California, had his things. Here we have, now Prost has started to go again. He's opened up about a half a second on Berger. We'll be back for the exciting finish of the Brazilian Grand Prix after these commercial messages. He responded in kind, putting his foot to the floor, and he's now pulled out a couple of extra seconds over Gerhard Berger to erase Berger's threat. But the real threat now is the laws of physics. Does he have enough fuel?
Well, I think the way he's going and the way he did, in fact, pull out a little bit of time there, that he must have judged. He's got a gauge in there that tells him how much fuel he's got left, and I can only assume that he must have enough left to continue.
The fact that he slowed down tells you he might have been concerned, and the digital clock there shows 3 laps to go. 3 more laps of the 1988 Brazilian Grand Prix with Alain Prost with an 11.5-second lead over Gerhard Berger. Former current world champion Nelson Piquet of Brazil 3rd, Derek Ward 4th, Italy's Michele Alboreto 5th, and Belgian Thierry Boutsen 6th. And now they're in with 2 laps to go.
And I think that Thierry Boutsen could well get displaced at 6th by Nakajima in the other Camel Lotus car, who's making ground. In fact, he has passed him. I'm not supposed to tell you that because I'm supposed to be watching the monitor, but he has in fact passed him to 6th spot. As we see on the screen, Alain Prost going on his way, looks like on his way to inexorably win this 29th Grand Prix for Alain Prost. So it won't be long before he's up into the magic 30s for a Grand Prix winning record, which is pretty staggering, really, when you're considering he only started Grand Prix racing in 1980.
That's right. And Prost, the race Yankee Stewart's record of 27 wins last year, he's had 121 starts, and his first drive in a Grand Prix car came in Argentina in 1980, and he's been a sensation almost ever since. And there he is at speed. And another thing that we can't see here, but we feel we ought to tell you about, is that Michele Alboreto is catching up with Derek Warwick. Derek Warwick holding down a good solid 4th spot, has been for some time. Unless he really extracts the old digit, he could be displaced from that 4th spot before the this race is won. As they came by, there was about a 100-yard interval between the 2 cars.
We're told on our monitor here that there should be 4 laps to go, but in fact, I think they're starting the last lap now.
And right now, Alain Prost has gone over the start-finish line to start. the final lap of the 1988 Brazilian Grand Prix. And there's the sun. And here he is. Let's follow him around on the Curva Pache, named after Carlos Pache, the famous Brazilian driver who won the Brazilian Grand Prix, only to lose his life in an airplane crash. And here, Prost, touching the outside rail. The car seems to be running smoothly, perfectly, and extremely fast on this final lap of the Grand Prix here in Rio de Janeiro.
Well, the McLaren cars over the last number of years have proved to be incredibly fast and incredibly reliable, as has the Honda engine, as it was seen last year in the Williams cars, and now they've got the package together, the Hondas and the McLarens. I can't see it being anything other than almost invincible.
Here's the top 6 positions, and it looks like that maybe that's the way they're going to finish, unless Alboreto gets by Warwick. But to have a new car out of the box, and there were 4 practice sessions, which one of these new cars was the top of every one. And this morning in the rain, the same new car was on top. That was Ayrton Senna, only had to go out. And to have a new design with a new engine combination, it's remarkable.
When you say out of the box, of course, you literally mean out of the box, because all these cars arrive in big crates from London in aeroplanes, and the first time this car that you're seeing now, the first time it turned the wheel was Friday morning.
Okay, and here with 200 yards to go, 200 meters, I guess I could say, Alain Prost of France takes the checkered flag of victory. And look at this. He stops the car immediately. The reason for that is the weight. Because they weigh the cars, and had he run out of fuel on the cool-off lap, it may well have been that the car wouldn't weigh enough and been disqualified.
He may have also had to walk back.
Right. So he wants the car to weigh as much as possible when the post-race weigh-in takes place. Well, how about that? All alone, Alain Prost, our winner today.
That is one explanation. The other explanation is it could have run out. The crowd here are throwing their seat cushions onto the track, which is the track they Brazilian habit, designed to try and decapitate any driver who should be foolish enough to go down the back straight fast on the last lap.
It's unbelievable. I've never seen that before. And here's our lonely race champion expecting his right rear tire. Alain Prost, the little Frenchman who is so talented, so fast, and so good.
He is unbelievable. Of course, his cronies call him the professor. He's called the professor in racing circles because he is so clever and strategic a driver. Absolutely fantastic. And behind him is Boutsen pulled up also.
There are the positions now. Gerhard Berger has taken the checkered flag in 2nd place. Nelson Piquet in car number 1 3rd. In 4th position, Derek Warwick was able to hold off Michele Alboreto, who got 5th in car number 27. A lap down in car number 2 was Satoru Nakajima, and they're the top 6. He was lapped down. They're the top 6 continuing. Car number 20 was Terry Boutsen in the Benetton Ford. And then Eddie Cheever was next in the USF&G car number 18, and then 4 laps back, a good ways back, in car number 26 was Stefan Johansson in the Lee J. And we'll be back for more, the closing comments of the 1988 Brazilian Grand Prix after this. Behind, as you can see, all the excitement going on there down around the track. What do you think of it, David?
Well, I thought it was a pretty good race. The normally aspirated cars looked like they were going to run extremely strongly to start with. Nigel Mansell hanging right in there with 3rd, and of course Thierry Boutsen putting on a great display. But the turbo power ultimately told. Now, everybody thought that here at Rio that the turbo cars would still reign supreme, and they certainly proved it. And Imola, I think, our next stop in a month's time, I think will be the same. But when we come to the shorter tracks, Monte Carlo, Detroit, and some of the tighter tracks, the normally aspirators, as the season wears on, are obviously going to become stronger and stronger and much more of a factor.
Well, Prost goes to San Marino on May 1st with the 9 points towards another world championship. Berger has 6, Piquet 4, Warwick 3, Alboreto 2, and Nakajima 1. That Japanese driver tried so hard to get that first point last year. He finally made it. Looks like he's now really part of the circus.
Well, he certainly ran very well all through practice and qualifying, and ran well this morning in the wet. But I think that, again, today's race has underlined that Alain Prost is the finest current Grand Prix driver. And, of course, Gerhard Berger is one of the real finds, the real up-and-coming young heroes.
All right, let's have a word now from John Bizignano.
Thank you very much, Chris. We have a very proud Jackie Oliver, the owner and manager of the Arrows racing team, sponsored by USF&G. Jackie, a very good day after 2 rough days of practice and qualifying.
John, I'm absolutely delighted. 4th place, some valuable World Championship points in the first of the season. But more importantly was that we ran very close to Nelson Piquet in the Honda, and we kept Alboreto and the Ferrari behind. So it looks like we've got a competitive car for this year.
Now, you were having trouble with the pop-off valve. I actually saw you taking the rule book onto the grid. What's the situation there?
Well, the pop-off valve has been giving us a lot of difficulties. I think we can solve the problem with the help of the FISA. We just got the valve very late, only 3 weeks ago, and we've got to do a bit more testing with it to get more power out of the engine. I'm sure we can do that with their assistance. So that means when we go to the next race, we'll have even more power to play with, which should mean we can run up there with the front.
You were 4th fastest in San Marino testing. You must be looking forward to that event.
Yeah, that looks good for us, doesn't it?
Thank you very much, Jackie. Chris, back to you.
And to the stirring strains of the Marseillaise, Alain Prost stands tall on the victory podium, flanked by Gerhard Berger and Nelson Piquet.
Alain Prost stands tall. That's a bit of a contradiction in terms, I think.
Well, he stands taller now after winning the race than he stood this morning before he started, David. McLaren has 9 points, Ferrari 8, Lotus 5, and Arrows 3, in the all-important Constructors' Battle, an important championship for the people who handcraft these cars. And we'll be back after this.